Hey guys, welcome back to another Gaming Memories video. Here we are taking a look at a very rare demo disc that was released from the official UK PlayStation magazine, Volume 2, Disc 3, from June of 1997. And the reason why I want to share this demo disc with you is because this is the first demo disc I ever bought myself during the first few months of being introduced to the PlayStation. At that point, when I had bought the demo itself, myself and my brother didn't officially own a PlayStation, but we were renting it out at the weekends. And as a result, we realised that if we were to get a PlayStation at some point in the future, or if we were renting it out, we would get access to a couple of games, but we wanted to have access to other games to play. So the fact is that we couldn't afford to buy games outright at that time because we wouldn't have had enough pocket money saved up. And we realised that demos were a very good alternative because with having limited pocket money, we wanted to still be able to have enough money to rent the PlayStation out at the weekends, at least until we could afford to get our own one or get one for Christmas, which we did later that year. But whatever pocket money that we did have at the end of the months, myself and my brothers would usually bunch our money together to get the latest magazine because we would all play the games. So this was the first demo disc that we officially got and bought ourselves, and we were excited to play the games that were on it. Now, there were only 4 games on this disc. A lot of the earlier demo discs had only a limited amount of games, but that was enough to get started. And what better way than to get access to games like of Excalibur 2555 AD, Porsche Challenge, Micro Machines V3 and Monster Trucks. Now, I had played Monster Trucks beforehand, but I had only played a different demo, but it was more of a beta demo. This was a demo from the actual game itself. But the first game we played on the demo was Excalibur, and I know that there's a lot of people out there that don't particularly like this game, but to be honest, myself and my brothers and even one of my mates, Derek, that lived across the road from us, we all were playing it on the day that we got it. And the whole weekend we literally just played mainly this particular game here. I'll never forget the interactions with this dude, the con man, where you had to do different tasks for him. It was actually so much fun. We just thought, even though there is better action adventure games out there, but again, because we were relatively new to the PlayStation, stuff like this was totally new to us, so we were just in awe of what was in front of us. And any type of game that allowed you to explore and to see things differently, we were just all in on it, and we really enjoyed this demo. If I'll be honest, actually, this is one of my favourite demos of all time because we played this to death. The one thing that we all loved about it was the fact is that you could explore the environments and that you had to solve puzzles. Everything you interacted with had some sort of puzzle tied to it, like very similar to Resident Evil that we had played before and we were playing in the months previous, where in order to access one area you needed to get a key or solve a puzzle to gain access to that area that you couldn't get into. So this was very, very similar to that, but in a kind of like a different format. It was more like third person. The camera was behind the character rather than from fixed camera perspectives, although you could change the camera angles to have like a camera kind of like from fixed perspectives or even from different angles, but it wasn't as well refined as some other games. But even just to play it from a third person point of view was really good, even though the controls in it were clunky, but that didn't make a difference. We just played this title to death. It was probably the most played demo on the actual disc itself. It was the most played demo on the disc itself because we just loved the exploration elements, the fact that you could interact with different people, and when you interacted with them you got different phrases and different sentences, and you were trying to figure out what to do next, how to find and solve puzzles, how to find items. Even though by today's standards the levels in the game is probably considered to be quite short, but back in those days this thing was just, it was incredible to see it in action, especially for the first time and to be new to these type of games. Also, this dude here that you were fighting, kind of like a boss type character, was pretty much invincible and you could never kill him. It was quite incredible. Even though the controls are quite clunky, it did take a while to get the hang of it. It didn't matter, we just stuck with it until we got the most out of it, and we enjoyed the whole experience. And even to this day we do talk about a lot of the games that really kind of mean the most to us and things that really stood out, and this demo disc was definitely one of those ones that did, because again there were so many unique games on it that really just were different and everybody really enjoyed them, even though a lot of people probably don't like them as I mentioned, but we really enjoyed them. We really got the most out of them. The funny thing about playing this demo, even though I really loved this game itself on it. I never got round to buying the full game for about a year or two at least afterwards. I was just so used to just playing the demo. To be honest, that was all I really needed. But eventually I did get to buy the full game, but at the same time it was also quite a hard game to get hold of at that time. I remember I found it just by chance in a game store, and it just happened by chance that I found a copy of this in a bargain bin in one of the game stores, and I think I got it for like 15 Irish pounds at the time. So I managed to get it for a good price. So I remember straight away I was like, yeah, I need to get this, because it's one of those games that, even though getting to play the demo, I've always wanted to get hold of the original game. There's always just certain types of games I found growing up, well, even just playing the demo alone was enough for me to want to buy the game. But even at that, there were some games that I played and I really enjoyed the demos but never owned the full games, and I'm sure a lot of you can agree. Some of the best games probably we ever played are from just the demos alone, because you had so much fun out of them. So that's why this demo really just still holds a special place for me, because again, even though I had played a number of demos and I had been playing a few games for a couple of months with the PlayStation as we were renting it out at the weekends, and we'd be going round to some of our friends' houses that had it, you get to play and experience a lot of these games. But this was the first demo disc that I owned myself, so it was a great experience to have, and that alone then spurred on wanting to get more demo discs. So for the next while, even for months and even the next 2 years, I pretty much bought the demo discs literally every month. Every time you had a little bit of pocket money, you'd always make sure that you would save it up so that you could buy the next demo disc the next month, because you were always interested to see what games would be on it. Because the cool thing about the magazines was you would have reviews with the games, but you'd also, towards the end of the magazine, they'd always give you kind of like a page where they give you a preview of the games that were coming up the next month, so it would get you all excited again. But what made this demo so special is because the fact is I'd never really bought likes of PlayStation magazines at that time. You'd read a few but never bought or owned any yourself, especially ones that had the demo CDs. So when you got to play it, like, I had heard of Monster Trucks because I had played it before, but I didn't know anything about like the Porsche Challenge, Micro Machines, and especially this game. I knew nothing about them, so I was completely new to all of this. So I was completely blown away by the way the games were and the way they played. I know that this game isn't as well received compared to other action adventure games on the PlayStation, but I still personally love it. I still will go back and play this every so often, because even though the game has a lot of flaws, for me it doesn't matter. It's how it makes you feel, and if a game keeps you interested and it puts a smile on your face and you're enjoying it, you just play it. It's as simple as. That's the way I see it, and that's why I always love the PlayStation, because games like this were all experimental, and this was proof that at that time, because everything was new to 3D gaming and so forth, there was loads of different companies trying out loads of different ideas. Some worked really well, some not so much, but even the ones that didn't work as well still have a unique place on the system, and they just do have some really unique features that really stand out, and you don't forget them, especially if you enjoyed the experience. I will be doing another video on Excalibur at some point, so make sure to keep an eye out for that, as with all the games in this demo disc. The next game we played on the demo was Monster Trucks, and I was excited to also play this as I had played a previous demo before. I have done a previous video where I show when I actually played this, and it was one of the first games I played on a demo when I first played the PlayStation. I'll make sure to drop it down below. And this game was based on a different level compared to the one that I had played before. It had been a lot more refined compared to the original demo. This track, compared to the original demo that I played, you couldn't go outside of the environment as much as you could have done in the previous version that I had played, because the previous version was still a work in progress demo, whereas this here was a more complete version because it was based on the more polished and finished game. But it was pretty cool because again it was a different environment. You were playing the same type of truck that I remember from the original demo, but it had really kind of funky background music which really suited the vibe and feel of the demo, and it was very fast paced, and especially with it being an off-road racer, anything to do with racing pretty much, much I was all in. So myself and my brother and my mates really enjoyed playing this version of the game as well. We all took goes in it to see how far we could get. And like with a lot of these demos, what was cool about them, what we enjoyed so much about them, is the ability to explore. We weren't just content with just playing one version of the game or playing one go and just trying to play it for what it is. We'd always try to explore and try to figure out any glitches, or if there was any shortcuts or things that would kill you. Like in this instance on that track, you would fall into lava and it would wreck your truck, but that was the whole point of it. You'd be trying to explore different areas and try to get an idea of what worked and what didn't. So that was the cool thing about 3D games, because again, everything was relatively new, so it was so much fun, and it's definitely great memories of playing this game. Micro Machines V3 was another hidden gem that honestly I didn't expect to be as good as it was. I remember playing likes of Micro Machines 2 on the Sega Mega Drive, and I thought it was brilliant. It was a very, very good multiplayer game. It was so much fun, although it was difficult. But then when I got to play this, and the fact is it was in 3D, it was the first Micro Machines game to ever be developed in 3D, so it was a totally new experience, and honestly I was completely blown away. Although with this game, compared to the other games on the demo, you couldn't play it on one player mode, you had to play it in multiplayer. But even at that, to be able to actually play a two-player demo was something was very different. The fact that you could play with an extra person, and you were given access to at least 2 different levels from within the game, so there was definitely a lot of replay value just in the demo alone, and this was so much fun. I actually had a blast playing this with my brothers and my mates. Again, it was just one-on-one pretty much, but you could play like say tanks, and you had the ability to be able to shoot your opponents and so they would explode. So the goal was to try and gain enough points to win the overall race, and how you won the race or won a point was to get from one point of the screen to the next before the next person did, and the one that racks up the most points will win overall. But even at that, you had the ability to race as normal throughout like a course of so many laps, which added to the fun of it as well. So not only was it combat based, but you also had the ability to race, so it added so many elements into it. But the one thing that I loved about this demo was the fact that the graphics, they were very cartoony and they were very bright and vibrant. The level design was fantastic, the colours and the graphics were brilliant. It really suited the aesthetic of the game. It was very, very fast paced, and even the multiplayer mode, like even just from playing this alone, like we had such a blast playing this for ages. Like that's what saying, this demo disc in general, there was so many good games, even though like there was only the handful of games that were on it, but they were all really good and there was so much replay value on them. With the likes of this demo alone, you didn't really even need to have the full game to have so much fun, because you could just play it with your mates and just have a blast playing it. Again, the laughs that we actually had, if someone got bet or someone done something silly, just the screams, everybody be laughing at everybody, like, and there was so many good memories and fond memories with this game. The fact is that you could go up in ramps that were made out of the likes of even like rulers, and driving around tables and interacting with different elements that could change and alter the handling of the vehicle, even change how certain things played out, even with the power-ups as well. So it just added so many really cool elements to it. It was just such a fun game, to a point that about a year or so later, my youngest brother also did get the full version of this game as a Christmas present, and again we just played it to death again. Like, it was just one of those games that really was so much fun, and in my opinion it is considered to be the best version of Micro Machines out there, as there has been a lot of other versions even on more recent consoles, and they are really good games in their own right, but I just think that this is pretty much the definitive version of the game. I just think there's so much on offer here. It really suits the whole style and vibe of the whole Micro Machines franchise. It just is a cool game, and it's easily one of the best multiplayer games on the PlayStation. I have done a review on this as well, so I'll make sure to leave a link down in the description so you can also go and check that out for the full game. But again, just this demo alone was just fantastic. It was incredible. Even with this next level, you start off with racing as monster trucks, but as you go through the race, once you get to different points in the track, you would change into a boat so that you could race on water. So you were just completely just in awe of what was happening. There was so many different elements to these type of games, and the fact that you were getting to experience them in a demo was just incredible. I know I said it at the start of the video that this is one of my favourite demos of all time, and with good reason, because there was so many features and hidden gems and hidden areas to explore, and that was what made demos so cool. Because even though you didn't have access to the full game, you got to try out a portion of the game, but that still didn't take away from the fun element, because you would go through each of the levels and you would try to explore. You would try to see if you could find any hidden areas or shortcuts or glitches that could give you an advantage, but that was the fun element of it, and that's what made these games so incredibly good fun. And the demos, like I said, and I'm sure you do agree, that the demos do need to be talked about a lot more, because the demos are definitely some of the best experiences that I've personally ever had for playing games on the PlayStation, or if on any console for that matter, and they just offer up so much value for what they offered. And I know there's a lot of gamers out there like myself that have had similar experiences, and they love the demos equally as much. They were a very important part of gaming back at that time, and honestly the demos for me personally are some of the best experiences I've ever had in gaming. Aside from playing the full games, the demos are equally as important, and they hold so many fond memories and so many laughs throughout the years of playing games on them. I know that you can get access to demos like through the likes of digital means, like on the likes of the PlayStation Store, modern consoles and that now, but there's just something that's lacking from that you don't get, that what you used to get with buying the actual magazines themselves. There's just something about saving up your pocket money at the end of every month to go into the local shop to buy the magazines, just so that you could get your hands on the latest demo to play the latest games. And you were very rarely ever disappointed with what was on offer. Even the games that weren't that great, you still found yourself playing them, and the rest speaks for itself. So again, with the likes of Micro Machines and all the other games on this disc, they are worth the playthrough. They're just really, really cool and so nostalgic, and hold so many fond memories.
Multiplayer game for the PlayStation Plus magazine. Nice one.
Porsche Challenge was the last game that we played on the demo disc. This was an early in development version of the game where you got to play on one of the race tracks, and you got access to race as two characters, but you could also change the difficulty from arcade to simulation, and even from easy to hard difficulties and so forth. So you could change things up as you went through it. So the track was USA, and you had the ability to race on as little as 1 lap, even up to a maximum of 10 laps. So you got access to literally the full race, but you only got access to a certain route within the race. As like with the Porsche Challenge game that came out in the early levels, you were restricted to certain areas, but when you got further into the game, different areas of the track would open up depending on where you were at a given point. But you didn't have access to that in this version of the game. Now the difference between this version and the final version that was released, and at the time because this was the first time I'd ever played the game, so we weren't really aware of what was going on, but the handling physics in the game, because it was still in development, wasn't as well refined as what you got in the final version, as the handling in the final version of the game was quite decent and the cars were somewhat usable, whereas in this version it was tough to try and get the grips with the cars. Now you could win the race after a few attempts once you mastered the controls, but it wasn't as polished and it just wasn't as good as what you got in the final game. But it was still a great way to gain access to play play a really good racing game. I have done a previous video on Porsche Challenge, so again I'll make sure to leave a link down below in the description to go and check it out. So with this game you had access to, say, the track, but you had to race against 5 other drivers, but you also had one rival on the track within those 5 other racers, and that rival would always be tackling you and gnawing at your heels pretty much throughout the race. So as long as you maintained your position, you were okay for the most part, but they were always very, very close to you. And that was the same in the full game when it was released. You always had that one rival on track that as soon as you made a mistake, they were on you straight away and they'd always pass you, so you'd have to spend the entirety of the race trying to keep them at bay. So this early demo was the first experience into that. And again, with it being a racing game, what was cool about this game is that you had 3 racing games on the disc. One of them with Micro Machines was a multiplayer game, but you had 2 out and out racers, with Monster Trucks being an off-road racer, but Porsche Challenge being a genuine arcade styled racer where you got to race like exotic sports cars. So this was a really cool opportunity to play something very unique and different, although because it was an early in development title, it wasn't as well refined as the other games on the disc, so it was probably the least playable for the most part on the CD itself, but it was still enjoyable once you got the hang of it. It wasn't as well refined compared to what you got in the final game. It was quite a struggle to get the hang of the physics, and you were trying to figure out how to use the likes of the handbrake and stuff, and the handbrake was and is quite sensitive even in the original game, but it was even more sensitive in this. And I do remember having to take quite a few tries. Even my brothers tried it, and I don't think they enjoyed it as much at the start. I think they struggled with it, but I persisted with it and eventually got the hang of it, but it was still a struggle. But I will admit, I do love Porsche Challenge. I think it's a brilliant game, but I enjoyed the other games on the CD equally as much as I did enjoy this. But it was still a great way to play an early version of the game. So here I have shared some of my all-time personal and favourite experiences I've ever had gaming on the PlayStation 1. And funnily enough, this demo itself had a massive influence and is a big part of all those fond memories and my personal history with the console itself, as there were so many iconic games on this disc. There were so many hours put into it. We learned so much about the system, and we got to experience so many quirky, obscure and unique games that just completely expanded on what was already available, and it just made us want to keep gaming and love the games on the console so much more. So this single-handedly is one of my personal favourite experiences ever on the PlayStation, and it really just comes from just this demo disc alone. I do believe that the demo discs don't get enough love, and that they do need to be showcased a lot more and to be talked about in more detail, as they were a massive influence in the magazines and even just in gaming in general back in the 90s, as a lot of these demos did have a direct impact on your purchase ideas or decisions, and in most cases you didn't even have to buy the full game. Like in my case, you got as much fun out of playing the demos. Like myself, my mates and my brothers played the demos equally as much and got as much out of them that sometimes you didn't even need to buy the original game. There was so much fun to be had. We played them for hours just as much as you would play an original game, and I'm sure a lot of you guys out there think the same, that there's so many fond memories that you would have had playing a lot of the demos, and that you would have enjoyed them as much as playing the original games, if not more so. So what are your thoughts on this demo disc? Did you manage to play it yourself, and if so, have you played any of the games that were on the disc? I'd love to hear your stories on your favourite types of demo discs. Was this one of them? Be sure to share it down in the comments below. And if you'd like to see more of these style of videos where I do explore a lot more of these memorable demo discs that were released on the PlayStation 1, where I share my stories and memories with everyone, then be sure to leave a like on the video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, and again hit that bell icon to be updated when those videos are released. And also feel free to check out other videos on the channel of other reviews of demo discs and even gameplay reviews from other games that were released on the PlayStation back in the day. And until next time, make sure to keep playing those classic games and enjoying them, and keep those gaming memories alive.